I had a chance to talk with Jonathan Stark. And if you don't know who Jonathan Stark is, he wrote a book called Hourly Billing is Nuts. And he really doesn't like hourly billing.
I think hourly billing is a cancer on professional services. So the sooner it dies, the better.
And we have a chance to sit down and talk about how to find leads, how to make more money, how to make more money faster, how to pick a niche. And like, I'm not the only one who thinks picking a niche is a huge idea. Listen to this.
I don't know how to work with someone who won't pick a niche. Like, I just have no confidence whatsoever that I can move the needle for them at all.
So I've done something different with this particular conversation. So across the top, in just a minute, the whole thing's going to start. And across the top, I've pulled out some of the key ideas, and like I have little icons. Like if it's like an idea, I put a little light bulb next to it. If there's a book reference, there's a little book icon next to it. Or sometimes I'll just quote exactly what Jonathan said as like a main takeaway for me. So as you're checking out the conversation, keep your eye kind of on that top space, and you'll see what I feel like are some of my key takeaways of this whole conversation. And then also at the end, you're going to see a couple of links to how you can get connected with Jonathan for a free value pricing course. And there's also another quiz on how to pick your niche. So I'll put a link in the description if you want to take my quiz on how to find your web design niche. But all of this is awesome. I can't wait for you to meet Jonathan. Check this out. All right, we've got Jonathan Stark. I've been following Jonathan Stark for a long time, probably multiple years. He's got an email list. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got the Ditching Hourly podcast. And it's so insightful with, especially with regard to value pricing, niching, finding clients, pretty much anything. If you're trying to like, especially if you're trying to run a business out of your house, you're trying to get like that solopreneur action going. And I found Jonathan to be incredibly valuable to me. And I'm excited that he's here. It's like I just reached out to him. I'm on his email list. And one day I just said, hey, you know what? It'd be great if you wanted to join me on one of these little YouTube interview kind of podcast style sessions. And to my surprise, he said, let's do it. So here he is.
Well,
So,
thanks.
Jonathan,
Yeah,
do you
I
want to
love.
introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. That's very nice. I love spreading the word. So, this is a great way to do it. I appreciate the invitation. Yeah, my name's Jonathan Stark. I live in Providence, Rhode Island, and that is sort of in the Northeast. So we're kind of getting kind of cold here, so hopefully I won't sniffle. But yeah, I am a former software developer. I did that for many years, probably over a decade. And eventually one day I had an epiphany about the firm I was managing, which was that hourly billing was wrecking the business. And it messed up all of our incentives. And I realized that if we were going to hire more people, we had about 10 or 15 people at the time when I was there. If we were going to hire more people, we'd want to hire juniors that weren't very good because we build everybody out at the same rate, and they juniors took longer, and that made us more money, and they cost less. So it was way more profitable. And I was like, this is crazy. We've got great developers. We want great developers. If we were going to hire someone, I'd want to hire great developers, but they're not that profitable. So and I was just like, nah, this can't be right. Like it took me probably 2 weeks. And then finally I was like, oh, it's because we're selling time instead of results or outcomes or anything else. So you want people who are slow and cheap. And I was like, I can't, we gotta do something about this. So I talked to the boss and I explained it to him like I just did to you. And he was like, I don't know what we would do. Like, what, okay, I understand what you're saying, but what we would do instead. And I had no answer for that. So I went out on my own to find an answer, and that was in 2006. So over time, I built up my solo consultancy, software consultancy for until like 2019. I think I let my last client go, and it went great. And a lot of my old friends from the biz were interested in how I did it. So they would reach out to me and say, hey, could you teach me how you do this value pricing thing I heard you talking about? And one thing led to another. I ended up writing a book called Hourly Billing is Nuts. And now, pretty much full time, I'm just on a mission to rid the world of hourly billing. So I come on great shows like yours and spread the message.
That's awesome. How did you make the transition from going to working at this firm to then working for yourself? Because I think I know a little bit about your past, that you were in like mobile app development, right?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
And so is that where you went? Is that where when you began to go into like business for yourself, you just be like, I'm going to be like a solo mobile app developer? Or were you like
So
at a firm with other developers at the same time?
it was before that. So the iPhone was announced in 2007, but it didn't really hit the big time with enterprise clients, or really businesses didn't really start paying too much attention to it until like 2009, 2010. And what I was doing in the firm, it was a FileMaker firm, which is like a desktop database software thing like Microsoft Access or something, or it's kind of like Airtable, but it was on the desktop.
Hmm.
Anyway, so we used to build FileMaker solutions, and that's what I knew how to do. And in 2006, I was just starting to learn how to do web development with PHP, which was this was before Rails and all that. And when I had the epiphany about hourly billing, I went solo and worked out a deal with my boss at the time where we did a profit split because there are a couple of clients wanted to stay with me, and we just split the money. And I went solo. So that was a really nice on ramp into my own business where I had cash flow immediately. And I was reasonably well known because I had been speaking at the FileMaker conference and I'd been writing in the magazine, which was a physical paper magazine back then. I was a technical editor there and I had a column. So a lot of people knew me as someone to reach out to who did FileMaker. I certainly wasn't the best FileMaker developer, but I was pretty well known. So I didn't really have that hard of a time getting clients. And in the first year, I experimented with something I discovered called value-based pricing. And even though I wasn't doing it quite right the first year, I still did way better than I did as an employee. It was very exciting. And so I just continued to work on that. And then to your question, so I was doing FileMaker development, but I was pivoting into web and FileMaker because I eventually wanted to go straight web, but I knew I wasn't well known for building websites, so I would just be one of many web developers. So I did this kind of straddle thing, and then the iPhone came out after it was announced after I'd been in business for 1 year, almost exactly, and that blew my mind. And I went after that like crazy, and it became known as the sort of before it was called responsive web design. I was doing at least the clients would call it HTML5 websites, even though that isn't quite right. But I wrote a book for O'Reilly on building iPhone apps with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it was very successful because the timing was very good. And I just got a lot of business from that. So that was the process during when I would have still called myself a software person.
Yeah, we have a really similar background in that. I have a computer science degree, and I started doing bioterrorism surveillance for the government when I first got out
Wow.
of college. And then I met a bunch of doctors, and we built this electronic medical record platform called the Vital Key, which is it was
Hmm.
built on this like USB drive that you stick into your laptop, and it would download your medical records from all your providers.
Hmm.
This is before they had like universal EMRs for everything, and so like I knew how to code. That's all. Like I was just a coder, and
Yeah.
the Vital Key was a Ruby on Rails app. It started out as PHP, but then moved to Ruby on Rails when it got more robust and everything. So one of the questions I have for you is, how did you make the transition from like coding guru to now you talk about pricing and strategy and niching and finding clients and marketing?
Right.
How did you learn how to do all that marketing stuff?
Yeah, it was just sort of a learn by teaching because when I first went solo, I had been, I had a ringside seat for what my boss was doing to bring clients into the dev shop that I was working at. And he was great at it. We were very, very busy. It was one of the most well-known FileMaker firms in the country. So I just copied him. So when I went solo, what does Chris do? Chris writes books and speaks at conferences. So I started writing books and speaking at conferences. I didn't realize that was marketing or that had a marketing feature to it, but I knew that the phone would just magically ring at our office when I worked with them. And so if I do those same things, maybe the phone will magically ring for me. And it did. So that was great. So I didn't really know what I was doing other than just copying Chris. And the thing that I was doing different from Chris was I wasn't billing by the hour. So I was having a lot of profit, which was like almost a foreign concept to somebody who's billing by the hour, but like legitimate business profit. And that gave me time to write more and speak more and do more research and those sorts of things. And one of the things I would research was, how to price services in a way other than hourly billing. And I came across a book by Alan Weiss called Value-Based Fees, which became my Bible for like a couple of years. I mean, my copy of that book has just got notes on every page. And my friend, I had a ton of friends, I had a big network in the FileMaker space. And when I left this sort of prominent firm, in retrospect, it seems like people were kind of not waiting for me to fail, but they were like, how's this going to work? Like, why would you leave this cherry job? And, I could probably stay there. I could probably still be working there if I wanted. And when they would ask me, like, oh, how's it going? And I was like, great, it's going amazing. I'm working less, I'm making more. The relationships I have with my clients are transformed for the better because they're not watching the clock. I'm not watching the clock. So, if timelines slip or anything like that, they don't care. It's like not costing them any more money. So they got very relaxed. No more fights about invoices, no more tracking hours, no more fights about hours. So it was fantastic. And they're like, and everybody I talked to was like, wow, because we all kind of hate hourly billing, but we didn't really think there was an alternative. So could you teach me how to do it? And I started getting invited to speak at conferences and user groups and meetups. And at one of these meetups, about 40 FileMaker developers showed up. It was in Boston. And I was still like all day coding. Like I was like a coder. Well, not full time, but I was like, that was the only thing I was doing for money. And I went up and they asked me if to like put together a presentation on like basically how I was running my business. And so I put something together and did the presentation. And then there were a million questions. And some of them I couldn't answer on the spot because it was just like a lot of it was just sort of natural for me. And so someone asked me a question that I'd be like, I wouldn't think about it like that in the first place. So I'm not sure how to answer you. And, but I took all that information in and people were still asking questions when the next group was coming into the room. So we had to give up the room. And so as we were leaving, I said, well, what I'll do is I'll take all these questions and you can email questions to me and I'll keep answering them every Monday. I'll blog about it and I'll just sort of figure it out, figure out answers to these questions and I'll blog about it every Monday. So I did that. I thought it was going to take like 10 weeks, but it ended up taking quite a few more. It took a long time. And those blog posts were kind of me figuring out how to teach people who weren't like me how to build a business like mine with it was interesting because I knew how to do this thing, but I didn't know how to teach the thing.
Hmm.
So I would go through this sort of question and answer process over email, and then I would blog about it. And those blog posts turned into my first sort of coaching book, my first business book, which was hourly billing was nuts. But that didn't come out until like 2016 when I said, you know what, I'm pivoting. I'm going to do business coaching. I'm not going to do software development anymore.
Hmm.
So
That's
maybe more
interesting.
information you were looking for.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that seems to jump out, like listen to you tell that story, and this I can relate to this too. Um, when I was doing, I used to basically bill hourly. I don't necessarily wouldn't say what the hours were, but I would think how many hours is this going to take, and then
Yeah.
put a thin margin on top of whatever I thought the hours would be.
Yeah.
And I found that it was very me focused. Like I was like, what is this going to cost me? How long is it going to take me? What do I have to do?
Hmm.
And the shift that I made was, what if I stopped thinking about me and
Hmm.
started thinking about the client or the other person? And that's where I began to think about, well, what outcome do they want? Which is a big thing.
Right.
Like, what are they actually trying to achieve? And then I can't remember if it was you that said this, but somebody that I listened to said, just pretend the person's going to give you like $1 million, like a
Yeah.
huge price tag. Then what would you do?
Right.
And
That's
that, in fact, one of the ways that I figured out how to do the DoubleStack program, which is my mentoring program for web designers, was I had been going to these word camps and talking and presenting at the word camps. And after the word camps, I'd go to the happiness bar, like the couches in the back, and people would be like, "Hey, Lee, how do you get leads? How do I? What do you think about my website? Stuff like that." And it was very
yep.
much like the email thing that you said that you were going to do every Monday. I used to just email people, and then I started to think, well, is there any way that I could kind of bring this together, make it a little bit more, efficient?
Yeah.
But it all came back to focusing on what does the client want? What does the outcome want? And then when I started double stacks, like, well, what if somebody at one of these work camps said, "Hey, Lee, I'll give you $1 million just to come to my house and show me how to do all of this stuff." And then that kind of opened up my creativity. Obviously, no one's going to do that, but it allowed me to think more creatively about how I can solve people's problems. And then maybe take some of those same outcomes and then pull the price back a little bit to something that's more reasonable for what you actually want to do. Did you feel like
Right.
that you had that same kind of mindset shift where it went from, well, what is it going to cost me to how is it going to benefit you?
Totally. 100%. In fact, I kind of encapsulate that as a concept I teach called scope last, which
Hmm.
especially for software, because any software developer is going to tell you like, oh, there's no way to know how long the project's going to take. So I have to bill by the hour because if I give a fixed price and there's a lot of scope creep, I don't know what I'm going to lose money. They're like terrified of what's losing money. And I'm like, well, if you're a professional, you should be able to give the client some idea of how much it's going to cost. And part of your expertise beyond just doing WordPress or whatever is managing the client. Like that's part of your job. So I think it's I think it's an abdication of responsibility for somebody to say, "Oh, I can't give you any idea how much it's going to cost." It's like between 5,000 and 5 million. It's like, come on. So if you flip your thinking 180 degrees in a sales call, so you've got a new client sends you an email, "Hey, heard you do great work. Love to jump on a phone call and see if we could work together." You jump on the phone, and they are probably going to ask you your hourly rate, and I would say I don't have one, and I just let the silence hang, and they'll say, well, how do you bill for your work? And I say, well, I'll give you a price up front for how much it's going to be. Does that work for you? I'll say, yeah, fixed price. That sounds amazing. So I say, okay, well, tell me about the project. And they'll brain dump for like 20 minutes about all the things that they want done. And then I'll say, this is great. I've got a bunch of pages of notes here, but can we back up and talk about the big picture? Like what is this? Because I would usually be building some internal workflow system back in the FileMaker days. And I'd be like, well, why do this? It's going to, I'd say something like, why are you going to give somebody like me $1 million to come in here, bother all your employees for months, asking them how they do their thing. How could it be better? What's important, what not to change. It's going to be very intrusive. It's going to be risky. It's going to be expensive. Why bother? Why not do it? And I'd launch into what I call the why conversation, where I'm asking these three categories of why questions. And I got this originally from that book, Value-Based Fees. It's like, why this? Why now? Why me? And if you can get reasonably good answers, or the better the answer you get, the better. If you can get good answers to those three categories of questions, you will know what's in it for them. You will know roughly how much it's worth to them, and what they believe your contribution to this desired outcome is going to be. Like in their minds, why do they think they need me? And then you've got everything. Your proposal writes itself after that. But in those meetings, I'm never talking about scope. I mean, I might bring up a technical question just to get them to brain dump more about something, but I don't care. I don't care about anything scopy in that meeting. All I want to find out is how much is this worth to them? If it's only worth $1,000 to them, there's no way we can work together. There's no point in me putting together a proposal. If it's worth $1 million to them, and my contribution is going to be at least some small part of that, well, then I can definitely charge $100,000 for sure. Or they wouldn't even be talking to me if they didn't think I could do a 10% contribution to this this $1 million outcome that they're looking for. So then I give myself a budget. So I say, okay, this is worth $1 million to them, or 100,000, or whatever it is. This is worth X to them. So I'm gonna put together a proposal. I've got the value first, then I'm gonna put together three prices at a tenth. Probably usually I'd go a tenth of that, and then I would 2.2 of that, and then 5 times. So it'd be like, for $1 million project, my three prices would be $100,000, $220,000, and $500,000. And then, and only then, would I say to myself, what could I do to help this client get farther down the road toward this goal that they want if they gave me $100,000? And that's going to be a very different thing than some scope I uncovered in the initial meeting. It might be completely different. If the value is really low, like let's say it's only worth $10,000. Let's say my assistance, whatever form it might take, is only worth $10,000 to them. Well, I can't charge them $1 million. It's only worth $1,000. Or what did I say? Yeah, $1,000. Let's say it's worth $1,000 to them, a logo, or fixing the nav or something like that. Well, why do you want the nav fixed? Well, people are getting lost. Well, what's the negative impact of that? Well, they can't find their way to the sales page. Like, okay, how much money are you losing? So we have those conversations, and then I'll say, okay, it's only worth $1,000 to them. It's a mom and pop pizza place. They're already at capacity. They can't sell that much more pizza. It's just causing a problem with their internal employees or something. All right, so it's only worth $1,000. So I'm going to come up with a $100 solution, a $220 solution, and a $500 solution. And that scope's going to be completely different. But if I talk to Domino's and they've got a problem with their nav, That's going to be worth $1 million to Domino's. So I'm going to come up with $100,000 solution, a $220,000 solution, and a $500,000 solution. And obviously, the scope is going to be different, right? Like if I've only got $100 to work with, I'm probably going to install a plugin for them, replace a plugin if I even work with them at all. But if it's Domino's, I might bring on a couple of contractors. I've never done that, but in theory, you could. I could bring in a couple of experts, be like, look, we got $100,000. I'll give you 25,000 if you can do this. Can you do this for 25,000? Yes, I can. Great. That's your job. And then you just parcel out the money and you do you do this in the proposal. So I'd say back to Domino's, here's what I would do. Here's the good option. It's 100 grand. Here's the better option. It's 220 grand. And here's the best option. It's 500 grand. And they would be incremental. So if they buy the second one, they also get whatever the first one was. And if they buy the top one, they get the whole soup to nuts, everything on the proposal. And if you do a good job uncovering the value in that sales meeting instead of the scope does not matter. It's irrelevant. The budget doesn't even matter if they give you a budget because they're budgeting for probably the wrong thing. So if you find out what it would be worth to this company after you are done, what are they going to do next? Oh, well, then this is going to happen. It's going to be amazing. Then you can set some prices. And only then does it make sense at all to think about the scope, like what you're going to do.
You know what you do so naturally? I had to work really hard at this. Maybe you did too. I'm not sure. But you're bringing leadership to the relationship as opposed to just being an order taker. And so, like in my past life, people would say, "Hey, Lee, I want you to do this. Here's the scope. Here's the end result. Like here's like the step by step, almost micromanagement, like what they want." And then I would say, "Okay, great. I'll just do the best I can to make sure you're happy doing these things."
Mm-hmm.
But what you were just saying is like, well, I'm just going to figure out what I'm going to. You don't need to tell me anything to do. You just tell me what the result is. I'll figure out what to do. And so now you're bringing leadership and authority, expertise, much, much higher value. And it just seemed like that just naturally occurred to you. You know what I mean?
It did and it didn't. So there's a story. I remember when the iPhone came out, it started to get popular. My mom was a sixth grade teacher, and everybody knew I had something to do with mobile. So anytime I went to a party or a barbecue or whatever, everybody was telling me, they're like, I've got an idea for an app. I can't tell you how many times I got an idea for an app.
Yeah.
And my mom, who didn't have a big budget, was like, you know what we need? We need an app for it was like this for the school scheduling and organizing the kids' schedules at school. It's like a huge, huge cluster the way that they did it. And she's like, this would be the perfect thing for an app. And I was like, in my head, immediately, I was like, like she had no idea how much it would cost. It would easily have been $50,000, easily, just to get started. And if it even worked. And so the whole time, I was kind of like, as we were discussing it, I found myself trying to talk her out of doing it. Because there's no way I was going to do it. Like at that point in time, I would have put her in touch with someone who did iOS apps in particular. That wasn't really my thing. So the whole time I was talking her out of doing it. And later I realized that that's the way I run my sales calls too. And so I started getting explicit about that. It's like, I want them to convince me that they are going to be happy that they gave me a big pile of money, because I don't want to work with someone who's not going to be happy after it's over. One of the things about hourly billing that drove me insane was it was almost impossible to guarantee customer satisfaction. Because in the sales call, like you described, they give you this list of like, here's the punch list of all the things we want done. And, and you never, it's just not part of the conversation, like what's in it for them or what customer, if I asked someone who just came out of a sales meeting like that, like, okay, what does the customer want? Well, they want me to do all these things. Like, yeah, but why? And they're like, I don't know. That's just what they want. So that's why the scope always creeps, because you're blowing through their budget. You're doing all the stuff they asked for, but they didn't ask for the right stuff. So now they're not happy, and you don't know why they're not happy, because of course you don't. They never told you what was actually going to make them happy. Nobody wants bigger buttons. Nobody wants a bluer logo. They want something that's going to come after that. They want something downstream of that. And if you don't find out what it is, it's like shooting hoops with a blindfold on. Like maybe you'll score some points, but it's just luck. So if you're working with clients who I'm getting into a new topic. I don't want to change topics too quickly, but there are some clients who really do want and need an order taker.
Hmm.
Those just aren't the clients you want to work. Those just not for you. Like they want an employee is what they want. They want
Hmm.
someone like they do know what's best for them. Maybe it's a CTO. Maybe it's someone who used to do WordPress development. Maybe it's Matt Mullenweg, and he does not need you to get into a strategy conversation about why you need your nav fixed. Like he knows, he just doesn't want to do it. He hasn't got time. So yes, those people exist, but you don't want to work with those people. You want to work with the ones who are not experts at what you do. So someone who is not your peer or superior in your craft, in this case, maybe WordPress development. You want someone who knows absolutely nothing about it, but they know their business down cold, right? And so that's where I'm looping back to your thing about leadership and me talking them out of working with me. I want I want them to leave me alone and not be over my shoulder,
Hmm.
second guessing all of my decisions. So it's way better to have someone who doesn't know anything about what you do and they just want a result because they'll talk about the result. They won't get into your business and you're not sending them timesheets. So they're not looking at these individual tasks that you're doing. They're just seeing outcome, 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 and they're seeing their business or their life or whatever getting better and better and better. And that's my TED talk on the leadership thing. It's like, of course you don't tell your doctor how to do your heart surgery. Of course you don't. You wouldn't want to, right? So those are the kind of clients you look for. So it's a combination of me being that way, but it's also partially it's me attracting the kind of clients who want me to be that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in fact, that leads perfect segue into the next thing I was going to ask you, because if you're going to provide the leadership, it sounds like you need to at least have some idea how to do the things they ask you. Like you wouldn't want somebody to ask you to do something you've never done before or something like that. So to what degree does niching come into play in terms of, I guess, attracting the types of clients that you want to work with, but both in terms of the mindset, but also in terms of the skill set, so that you can actually create the outcome that they want and you can actually lead them in the right direction?
Yeah, it if you focus down on a particular kind of client, you will get way better at hitting home runs for that client, that kind of client. So if it's, it's WordPress, it could be, you could get maybe e-commerce brands that need like lots of landing pages, or it could be coaches who
Hmm.
are trying to create a community on WordPress, or it could be someone who wants to have their own homegrown version of like digital delivery. There's like so many different kinds of businesses that it's crazy. It could be power washing companies that just want to get leads or they want the phone to ring. It is so many different ones. And as soon as you stop trading time for money, you get a direct, big financial benefit from being faster. Because if you're billing by the hour, there's no way to deliver an hour faster than an hour unless you're lying. So if you want to benefit from getting good at what you do by delivering high quality outputs faster, well then fix price. And then as soon as you fix price, I don't care how you fix price, whether it's productized service or time and materials or value based or whatever. As soon as you have a fixed price, you benefit massively and meaningfully financially from being faster. And a really good way to get faster is, so one way is to learn your tools, of course, but that tops out pretty quickly. In most cases, that tops out pretty quickly. And then the other thing that you can get really good at is serving a particular kind of business where you see the same kind of problems over and over and over. Maybe you build a plugin that solves this problem over and over and over, and you don't sell it like a plugin, you sell it like a service where you integrate the plugin and you use customer service and you use all these things, but it takes you like very little time and it delivers a huge amount of value to them, which means you can set a price that's insanely profitable to both of you. And that's never going to happen unless you're serving a specific kind of client over and over.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
100% agree. Yeah.
yeah,
It's sort of like in IKEA. You ever go buy anything from
yeah,
IKEA and you have to
yes,
assemble it? It's
yes.
like you can be really good at your tools. Like you said, that get good at your skills and your tools, and that tops out. Because like I can be really good at using screwdrivers or whatever.
Mhm.
But it might take me a long time to build the desk that I bought from IKEA. But if I could build it a second time, I could probably do it in half the time. And then by the
Right,
time I get like three or four or maybe 10 into it, I can just do it in my sleep without even thinking about it really
right,
fast.
right.
So,
Yeah.
so do you feel like it's a good idea? So one of the things that I teach in our courses, or it's really more of a mentorship than a course,
Hmm.
but the concept of a solution first agency, where you
Hmm.
create the solution first, like whatever it is that you're going to do, and then you tell people, hey, I've got this outcome that I can create for you. Who might be a good fit for that? So, for example, it could be something like you were saying, the power washing company. I know how to generate leads from within driving distance of your location. So you have a tightly packed route and all that other stuff. Do you want that? Which is totally different from I know how to fix the Domino's nav to increase orders, you know?
Yeah. So that sounds a little bit like a productized service, which is another
Yeah, it's
thing
very much
that,
like a productized service.
yeah, okay. I'm a huge fan of productized services. They are a great starting point for people who are used to billing by the hour. They're they're very low risk compared to value pricing. You can really shoot your foot off with value pricing. So if anybody listening is thinking about giving value pricing a try, you should first check out my free email course about it. But do it on a very small project first. Because if it takes you twice as long as you're expecting, you don't want 1 year to turn into 2 years. It'd be better to have 1 week turn into 2 weeks or something like that. So you're like, whoa, I actually was scoping in my head the whole time. And whoa, I actually didn't uncover the value or whatever. So value pricing is kind of risky, but there's a lot of reward. If you get big clients, you can grow a solo business very big if you're working with clients like I was, like Nokia and Staples and
Mm.
Time Magazine, right? So they very high. The Domino's. You're attracting Domino's level clients, and if you're value pricing, you can hit gigantic home runs, financially speaking. But it's very risky. So productized services is a really nice middle ground. So you can use productized service it's basically a fixed scope service that you sell at a published price on your website. That's to me, that's the ideal for a productized service, where it's something that someone can just swipe a credit card and like you wake up and wow, there's $2,000 in your bank account. You didn't do anything. You didn't sell. You didn't have a conversation. Maybe you answered an email, but probably not. And somebody just bought it. And now you have to you deliver it like a service, like, okay, great, your kickoff call, and then here's the people I need to talk to. These people need to be on the meeting or whatever. You need to give me access to the installation. It's a service. It's just like a service, but it's so much easier to sell, right? Because of what you're saying, it's like here's a solution to a problem. It's a hammer. Here's a hammer. Do you want a hammer or do you want a table saw? And it's or a handsaw or a table saw or chainsaw. What kind of saw do you want? So people who know they need that solution will gravitate to it. So talking about it in a solution way can be a little tough from a marketing standpoint because who do when it's like I need to make people aware of this table saw. So here's the table saw. If you only talk about the features of the table saw and not the benefits, then it can get a little tricky. But you didn't say one way or the other how you describe it when you said solution first. People usually talk about features, but if you're promoting the thing like a bottle of Motrin, where you're not just talking about the ingredients, those are on the back. No one cares about those. Maybe they'll look. They want to know that their migraine is going to go away fast, and that's what's on the front. So as long as your solution talks about the benefits and the kinds of pains it fixes. So like the ideal buyer is aware of a symptom that is keeping them up nights. And if you talk about that on the front label of your air quotes product, then that can work great. That works great.
Yeah, I'm all about the benefits, like almost 100%. In fact, I even go so far as to say in the beginning, when you're trying to launch a business like this, to just optimize for making as much money as you can at the expense of your time. So allow people to call you because they want the benefits, even if they don't know what the price is, because there'll be this middle ground of people that might have talked themselves out of calling you because the price is too high or something like that if you post it. But
Mhm.
after you talk to them and they like you and they believe in the product that you're offering, then, oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it anyway. So you'll
Yeah.
be able to get those middle ground people. And then once you have some revenue rolling in and you feel pretty decent about things and you want to kind of shift more towards optimizing for time, then you can post your prices and everything. And you'll probably miss out on some of those middle ground people. But, just like you said, just swipe a card, $2,000 lands in your bank account and you don't have to worry about doing anything other than delivering the service. Does that
Right.
resonate with you?
Yeah. So The problem with productized services, which you could address by not posting the price, is that generally speaking, you're going to end up leaving money on the table.
Hmm.
Because if you have a nav repair service for WordPress sites and you price it for mom and pop, and they come in and they say, and they swipe a credit card for $50 or $500, great. Now, if Domino's comes along and swipes a card for $500, you probably just lost $50,000. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Or you could have gotten a lot more money. So some people will, air quotes, value price productized services, which to me is kind of like a no man's land. Like, why bother? Just keep raising your price. So so like rather than talking to every single customer, just test the market. And the way I do what you just said is that I have people, when they make a new productized service, I have them run 3 beta clients through it pro bono in
Hmm. Yeah.
exchange for, yeah, it's the same concept, in exchange for feedback on the marketing materials, feedback on the delivery. How could I improve the delivery? How could I make this more valuable? What wasn't valuable? How could I take something out that didn't add value for you? And at the end, if you liked it, then a testimonial. And when you go through that process, assuming the productized services, I usually think of them as something that takes anywhere from like 5 to 15 hours spread out across the course of 2 to 4 to 6 weeks. So they're relatively small. So if you run a few beta clients through, you're going to get a lot of really useful marketing information. You're going to get a lot of really useful product development information, and you're going to get probably 3 testimonials that you can put on the website. And you can say to them, I'm glad you loved it. Thanks for the testimonial. Listen, I'm going to you're going to want to get pricing information from them. So I would get on a call with them like this or in person so you can see their face, and you say, if I was going to price this $2,000, would you recommend it to other people at that price? And you're going to see their eyebrows are going to tell you the answer. They're either going to go, oh yeah, like eyebrows will go down. They'll say, oh yeah, that's a no brainer. Or they're going to go, $2,000.
Yeah.
So if the eyebrows go down, 2,000 probably not high enough. If the eyebrows go up, 2,000 is too high. And if they kind of stay in the same place, then you might be in the ballpark. So I would use the eyebrow test. I would use that as the price. Then I would start promoting it to other people, mailing lists, podcast listeners, social media, webinars, maybe. And then every time I sold one, if it's like, whoa, that sold right away, increase the price by 65%, and
Hmm.
just find the top of the market. There might be people out there that pay $100,000 for it, but you don't have access to them. So you need to
Hmm.
price it for the people you have access to, and you'll find a spot. And if you increase it again and crickets, you don't hear from anybody for 6 weeks, then okay, you went too high, back it down to the previous price, and to a point where there's actually an economics term called price points, which is a specific thing as the effect of the increased price on the decreased demand. So you can just find a place where it will sell at a rate that you are happy with. And then, I think you said before, then you can start optimizing for time in the delivery, not just the sales, but in the delivery, where you just get better and better and better at it by creating tools and boilerplate and checklists and onboarding and all of these things to make the delivery go super smooth. And if I'm not a hiring type of person, I'm a solopreneur totally. But in theory, you could get someone junior to kind of like run the system. And I know a
Hmm.
lot of people that do that.
What do you think about you said people that you have access to? Like, how do you get the leads?
Yeah,
The thing that you said about the beta people, I tend to the language I would use for that would be a pilot program. It's a little
sure.
bit different because all the stuff that we have has like a recurring revenue component to it. Like,
Okay.
you build the website, but you also do the marketing, the SEO, the ads, the funnels,
Hmm.
all that stuff. And so what we would normally do is like take on 2 or 3 kind of pilot program people, usually at free at
Hmm.
first, and then once results start happening, like once you start getting leads, say, hey, everything's gonna be free till you get your first 10 leads. And then after that, it's going to be what our normal price point might be. And you might even talk about that. Like, if I could get you 10 leads a month every month, what would you feel like is a good price? Oh, $800 a month or $1,000 a month. So like, well, when that happens, let's just flip it over because that way you don't have to work for free forever. Because in the one that you were talking about, like a $2,000 delivery, you're kind of done. But since we have these kind of ongoing relationships, it kind of stinks to work for free forever. And so there needed to be some
Kind of.
flip to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
either fire the client, which was no good because what if I tend to like my
Yeah.
client, so I want to keep it going. And
Yeah.
we just kind of do that kind of results flip as opposed to a timeline thing. So I don't like to do 6 months or like I'll do it for free for a certain period of time because what if it doesn't
Mhm.
work yet?
Yeah.
Now you have to start
Yeah.
paying and it still doesn't work or whatever.
Yep. I come up with that problem when people are doing like it seems like these all you can eat subscription services are getting pretty popular.
Hmm.
Design Joy, Brett from Design Joy, kind of
Yeah.
kicked off this movement. And I've got several students who are doing that kind of thing, like development as a service, design as a service, product management as a service, and it's just ongoing. Whatever it is, few $1,000s a month for unlimited requests. And yeah, so like, how do you beta test that the way that I described? You really can't. So I like the results oriented. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So like, not basing it on some number of months. You get, oh, this is like 30 days free and see if you like it. And
Hmm.
if it's the kind of thing like where the results are gonna take a little while to build up, it makes a lot of sense to do it like that. Yeah, that's a good one.
What do you feel like is the best way to go about connecting with people, like the relationships and the leads and getting access to clients to work with, especially if you're just going out on your own? Like a lot of people that I work with and DoubleStack and everything, they feel like they don't know people, but then after you
Mhm.
talk to them, it's like they actually do know more people than they're thinking of at the time, but they feel
Mhm.
like they're sort of isolated and sort of starting from scratch. And then you can one of the things I'll say is, hey, why don't you just look at your bank statement over the last 6 months and see where did you go? Where did you shop? Where did you spend money? Did you like the experience? Was it good? Because we focus a lot on local business owners that do things
Okay.
like I bought a piano the other day. And it's like maybe I could work with the piano business or whatever. So
Yep.
so I like to work on the relationships, but I also know that it feels awkward to say, hey, do you want to buy a website? And so it's like you
Right.
can't jump in so deep so fast. What do you think about strategy for making connections? I know one of the things you said earlier in the conversation was write a lot, talk a lot, just be out there so people can find you. But what if you wanted to reach out to them? Like I
Mhm.
know you've been spending some time on LinkedIn and stuff too. So maybe you want to mention some stuff about that or just whatever you think about lead generation.
Sure. Yeah. So when people join my mailing list, the first email, there's an automated sequence at the beginning to kind of orient them and to the basic concepts that I'm going to talk about. And the first email, I ask them to reply and basically tell me what their biggest business challenge is right now.
Okay.
And at least 80% of them, it's some version of I'm not getting enough leads
Hmm.
or I don't have enough clients. Probably maybe even more than 80%. That is the most common one. And I reply with the same thing every time. What kind of clients you're looking for? And their reply is always anyone with a pulse and a checkbook. And so step one of generating leads is knowing what kind of clients you want to work with,
Hmm.
especially software developers, like web developers. Like, I could make a website for anybody. It's like, yeah, but you can't market to everybody. It won't work. I mean, you can, it won't do anything. You're just going to look like another generic WordPress developer, and you can get those for $5 an hour on Upwork. So I wouldn't want to play that game. You want to be the one and only for something. So an easy way to do that, especially with a platform specialization like WordPress developer, is to pick a target market, some group of people that have stuff in common,
Hmm.
people that talk to each other about business, people that go to the same conferences. Because if you can become the one and only for them, which is usually possible, you can almost guarantee it if you pick a small enough niche. You don't want to be too small, but that almost never happens. So if you pick a niche, you can be the one, and you can be the WordPress guy for dentists or whatever, periodontists. So that's possible. And if you become the one and only, well, let's pause that for a second. If you know who you want to become the one and only for, let's put it like that, it becomes extremely easy to find them, or at least to find out if it's possible to find them. Some people are just not online. Doctors they don't seem to be online. They don't hang out and talk shop. Marketers are constantly online. Digital agency owners constantly online. There's all these kinds of people who are online a lot. If you want to just do online, I just do online. I don't have any local clients. I
Hmm.
do purely remote. So all of my outreach and marketing has to be remote. But if you know who you want to attract, it's usually very easy to find them. If they're not online, fine. If you really want to work with those people, it's trade shows, it's chamber of commerce, it's incubators, it's events, local events, it's conferences, if I didn't say that already. So fine, you got to meet them in person, fine. But if you know who you want to go after, it's like, of course, you're not getting enough clients and you don't know how to reach out to them because you don't know who you're looking for. You really, it's kind of like it's like if I said to you, what kind of bait should I use?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What are you
I
trying to
don't know.
catch?
What are you trying to catch? Right. So it's like, should I start a podcast? I don't know. Do your ideal buyers listen to podcasts? Well, I don't know who my ideal buyers. I could sell to anybody. It's like, well, so you could reverse engineer it and say, like, I want to do a podcast to promote my business. So of the people who I could work with, who listens to podcasts a lot
Hmm.
and maybe has a lot of, buying power, and just reverse engineer it that way. But I don't know how to work with someone who won't pick a niche. Like, I just have no confidence whatsoever that I can move the needle for them at all. It's because the other approach is you need to if you pick no target market, you're marketing to the whole world. So now you have to be famous in the whole world of whatever your world is. You have to be famous in the WordPress ecosystem to attract high paying clients for your products and services. That's a really hard thing to do, right? Especially on a mature platform. But any of them, Notion even is like, you're not going to be the most famous Notion developer in the world.
Hmm.
It's too late. Or Notion, I don't know if developer is even the right word, but Notion consultant, let's say. WordPress, Shopify, no, you're not going to be the most famous in the world. But you can be the most famous in a little market. So you can be a big fish in a small pond. That is the thing you want to go for. So I think if you do that, I forget what the question was, but if you do that, then it becomes way easier. Oh, lead gen, right? It becomes way easier to know what bait to use, right? Because if you're trying to catch fish or coyotes, you're going to use different bait,
Yeah.
right? So, if you're going after doctors, data scientists, power washers, you're going to be in different places. You're going to use different kinds of media. Some might be ads, some might be cold calls, some might be podcast webinars, social media, TikTok, LinkedIn. There's a million choices, and people say, "Oh, does LinkedIn work?" It's like, well, maybe. Are your people on LinkedIn? Well, everybody's on LinkedIn. No, everybody's not on LinkedIn. So I could go. Obviously, I'm on a soapbox, but pick who you're trying to reach, even if it's not forever. For the next 6 months, you're going to try and reach power washers. You're going to research power washers. You're going to learn their language. You're going to find out what keeps them up nights, and you're going to see what the competitive landscape is for WordPress developers who are trying to attract power washers, and research that. And almost for sure, it's going to become obvious how to do it, what to say. Should it be cold call? Like, I had one client, dev shop, and they were focusing down on asphalt companies, real old school, not computerized at all, and forget about it. No social media. You couldn't even get them email. They wanted you to call them, and they'd answer. It's just a cell phone based business. So you'd call, they'd chat. They're sitting in the truck anyway. And the salesperson just could get people on the phone. And what else do they do? Trade shows, like local industry events, that kind of thing. And they were the only dev shop there. Everybody else was selling chemicals and shovels and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm 100% on board with the niche. In fact, so much so I made a quiz. In fact, I'll put a link in somewhere around this video in the description or something where you can go. It's like lee.blue/niche-quiz. And you answer
Okay.
I think it's 7 questions, and it'll tell you what web design niche to target based on your skill set and the stuff that you like or whatever. So I'll do that. But I know that your time is, we're getting ready to reach the end
Yeah.
of it. Tell people where people can find you and how to get connected with more of these value bombs and everything.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. I would say for this conversation, I would go to valuepricingbootcamp.com, valuepricingbootcamp.com. Right. And that will redirect you to a page of my website where you can sign up for a free 6-day email course. Goes into value pricing a little bit more in depth. It compares it to other things like cost plus, which we also talked about. Of course, it compares it to hourly. and starts to introduce you to the concepts in a little deeper way than we did today. And then after that, if you don't unsubscribe, you'll just get added to my daily list and you'll get a orientation sequence. And then at any point in any of that, you can reply to a message and it goes straight to me.
Which is true, which is why we're having this conversation right now. I've been on Jonathan's list for like, I don't know, a couple of years maybe at this point. It's great stuff. He writes all the time. He's got these little cartoons that he'll send you like once a week or so.
Yeah, Sunday.
Which is
my Sunday
the whole
comic.
thing is great. You'd be crazy if not to join.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Well, I had a lot of great takeaways from that conversation. I thought it was really fun. One of the things that I'm taking away is after you pick your niche and you do your marketing, you're going to start getting a lot of sales calls. And I've had over 4,000 sales calls. And one major realization during that time that I think you'll find really interesting, and I made a whole video about my one major takeaway from over 4,000 sales calls. Plus, if you want to take that niche quiz, you'll find it right here.